Well, welcome, Cranial Grind listeners. Today, I'm super excited to have a friend of mine, I consider him a mentor, Aaron Chapman. He's the branch manager, senior loan officer, and essentially business owner of his own world at Security National Mortgage. I'm super excited to have him today. You're going to get a wealth of information from him. Every time I chat with him and all the experiences I've had with him, I walk away a better person because of it, because of his experiences, his insights, and big thinking sort of approach. So, Aaron, thanks for joining today and welcome.
Well, thanks, Tom. Darn well, man. You asked, I'll jump in and help out wherever I can. It's always cool to see somebody who's willing to expand themselves. And that's what you're doing right here is expanding yourself. Kind of like you did when we first met face to face. The first time we met face to face is you flying out to meet me in Missouri with a couple of the guys, stick you in a tree stand and a pen and a paper and make you write your future. Right. That was definitely a unique experience, not something very many people get to do, which I'm finding to do with a lot of other people in the future. But man, writing it down, what has that done for you?
Oh, it's incredible. Yeah, that was an experience I share with people all the time. I mean, to have that forced alone time sitting in a tree stand, never done that in my life. I have friends and family members who are avid outdoorsmen, hunters, all those things. I said, I'd never picture myself in those worlds. And you forced us to kind of get out of our comfort zone and to actually think and reflect and write down. It's such a powerful thing. And I was just thinking about that the other day because we're coming up on that 5 year mark. And I said, I think it's time to go back. And
5 years.
yeah, almost.
Wow. Yeah, it's amazing how time blasts by, dude, and all the different things that we see and we do, and you wonder what we've accomplished in that time frame. It's cool to see what does happen when you put intention behind it, and that's really what it is, the intention. It's kind of like what you were describing my job here with the organization. Started off in this world, this world was not. A lot of people ask me how I get started, and I think it's necessary to share with people how one gets started. And it was probably probably about 4 years ago that I heard somebody at a big event. He was speaking and he used to do what I do, right? He was a loan originator. He's now doing other things, but he said, nobody goes intentionally into becoming a loan originator. It's because you can't find a job doing anything else. And I was 100% right because that was my world. I could not find a job doing anything else at the time. Before that, I, did my high school years on a cattle ranch and worked in Wyoming in the oil fields. Then ran heavy equipment, drove truck. I ended up in the mines in northern New Mexico. When they shut that project down, I thought, I've done so many things. It'd be easy to find a job. So as I came from New Mexico back to Arizona, because my wife and son were here, I figured I could easily get a job, spend a little time with them. And then I couldn't find a job. And money started getting tighter and tighter and tighter to the extent that there was no money. And I remember deciding to take an opportunity to go apply for a $10 an hour truck driving job to haul landscape rock. And that's where I went to this place, applied. I thought, there's no way I won't get this job. And they also turned me down for being overqualified. So as I'm leaving there, wiping tears from my eyes, I get in my truck, I started up and I'm heading to a grocery store to get coupon for free diapers because, we couldn't even afford diapers at that time. Is that dire, if you will. My gas light comes onto my truck. Not knowing how long it could go, I decided I'd find the first place I could find a grocery store and a gas station next to each other. I happened to cross one that had a gas station in the same parking lot as a grocery store, which is common now. Pulled up there. This was 1997. Pulled up there, ran my debit card, only form of payment I had. I got a decline because I was overdrawn. Rifled through my truck, to find hopefully a lost dollar, and I found a few coins. Basically decided at that point that I would just lock the truck door and start walking the parking lot. And at that time, in the 90s, people were still carrying change. Well, I found enough change to get a couple gallons of gas after a lengthy period of time wandering this parking lot. And I don't know if you've ever been in that type of a situation before, but you look around, right? See who's looking, quickly bend down, you pick it up, and then you keep going. Like you feel embarrassed. And I gathered enough, then I exchanged my hours of time walking a parking lot for a couple gallons of gas, went straight into the grocery store, find the corresponding diapers with the coupon, get into line. And it's again, another one of those self-conscious moments where you set the single thing you have in your possession to go to the checkout stand with, and then you give them a coupon for it so you can get it for free and you leave. And I'm trying to just get out of there as quick as I can. And another individual recognized me, ran me down, asked me, "Hey, let's go to dinner. I got something to share with you," after I told him what was going on in my life. And I said, "Dude, I can't afford dinner." He goes, "No, I got a gift certificate to Red Lobster from a client." And that's where he took me and my wife out a couple of days later, shared with me about the mortgage industry. He started me off as a telemarketer at a broker shop at the end of 1997. So fast forward now, I'm not just a regular loan originator at a company. I use a company because I don't want to have, the compliance department, the legal department, all that stuff to have to deal with, the HR. I don't want to own it. I'd rather just produce. Maybe that's short-sighted of me, but that's where I felt about it. But I've created a team that's literally 100% a company within a company. From the initial phone call to the funding is all controlled by us. I focus on the real estate investor trying to buy single family, duplex, triplex, fourplex using conventional financing, because the majority of the banks out there suck at it. And so because they suck at it, they've carved an awesome niche for me. Used to start off as a telemarketer. Last year, I closed 1,378 transactions for real estate investors, which is almost 6 every working day.
That's incredible. It's incredible. Yeah. And that's what I love, the story, your background, because to your point, no one's thinking, even in my world, being in the insurance space or even sometimes finance, you never expect you're always going to get there. Like this wouldn't be where you land, but it's just fascinating to kind of hear the experience you went through. And here it is, almost 20 years later, you're still in this business.
Yeah, coming up on, I'll be 25 years, I think, this year. Yeah, 25 years in December.
Incredible.
And it's been a crazy 25 years, right? So that's what people got to get. Just because you start and you go, and doesn't mean it's just going to keep building from there. I thought it would. I thought that that's how it was, because people said, once you hit about year 5, it just compounds from there. Well, year 5, I was making really good money, and I was early 20s or mid 20s, actually. And I thought, man, or mid to late 20s, if this is where it starts, right? This is just the beginning. You last 5 years, it just compounds. I thought, man, I was doing stupid things. I was pinwheeling money out like crazy because it didn't matter. And then August, 2008 happened. Right. It was a completely different thing than what the market was ready for. And the market created that themselves. And when it come crashing down, it hurt us all badly. I got in a motorcycle accident August 8th of 2008. Woke up in the hospital bed after surgeries and stuff. And by the grace of God, did I make it through that. But that's what I endured during the 2008 crash while everybody else was enduring financial loss. I endured financial loss of memory, loss of use of legs, put in a wheelchair. I got my use of my legs back. But the one thing I did get out of that is I got a full beard. I couldn't grow a beard. I had a patch here that wouldn't fill in. That side of my face got tore up and it filled in. So when I woke up in the hospital one day, I noticed I have a beard, right? So I decided I wouldn't trim it until I learned how to walk again. Well, it got about yay long, and I started to take steps, and I kept it trimmed to that point. Well, fast forward, right? You've got all of a sudden everybody's trying to, they're coming after you for your funds. They're wanting to foreclose on your houses. They wanting to take your cars from you. They want an explanation as to why you can't pay the bills. Well, we knew that. I mean, there was a crash. There's an easy way to figure out why they couldn't, but they also need to understand, did you really not have any money, right? They want to make sure that they're just not giving somebody clemency that has resources. Well, what I would do is I'd fax them my first week's medical bills, just the first week. And I had multiple weeks, and that was $1.7 million for the first weeks. They backed off really quickly and gave me a lot of clemency. Not everybody had that, right? So during the crash, I got to see a lot of people changing careers. There's a lot of people I knew that ate bullets, right? They went to their office because everything's compounding, right? They left their house like they were going to work, took a firearm with them and just ended it right there in their office. It's amazing what happened when things went sideways on me. I found it as a blessing to be able to send that in and people back up off me so I could recover. Now, did I recover the way I should? No, man, I wanted out of that. I want to go back to work. I pushed myself too fast and I put myself in a bad position physically. It took a lot longer to recover than it should have, but I still recovered and got back into stuff. And then I was able to start building up again. Then you get to 2015. I had merged with another guy, and we were getting ready to really blow the business up. He decided to change things on us practically overnight, and he took everything. I started again at zero, November 1st of 2015. I had to read, and what it did though is tell me the ways that things don't work and the ways that they do work. And it was a great blessing to see how he ran the business with me and on his own, and what the real big mistakes were. Because he was the gold standard, in my opinion, of the real estate investment finance guy. But I saw a lot of holes in the system. So as I plugged those holes, we built what we have. Is it perfect? No. I'm hiring people to help me plug even more holes right now, since we kind of slowed down a little bit with the market. Perfect time to clean everything up and make sure we're extremely tight in our operations. So when it comes back again hard, we can do twice as much with half the effort.
That's great. So going back to that accident back in 2008. So, I reflect on it now, and what's it done for you over, your outlook on life and your outlook on your business? Like, how did it impact you for the long term?
Well, for one, the outlook on life initially was you start to see the people around you differently. And it's be like my wife and kids, when they were there, I don't know that I appreciated or knew the people well that I was living with until I went through that experience and saw how much care they had for me and what they were doing for me consistently. My wife was constantly there. I had the use of only one limb, and that was my left arm. But in my stubbornness, I did not let anybody do anything for me. I did it all myself, and that prolonged my healing process. But at the same time, there are certain things, you did need help with, right? Go get this or go get that. You'd want to pull yourself one arm into a wheelchair, wheel yourself around with one hand to the other room just to get a drink, right? You had people helping you do a lot of stuff. I couldn't mow lawns. I couldn't do that. So being able to appreciate other people much more when you can't do for yourself, it was huge. The other thing that I got out of it was the need of a team. I was the lone ranger in my business at that time. I needed other people. Since then, so I built the team up and got all that going and really made them somewhat autonomous, but reporting to each other. I got COVID in 2021, April 2021, and I was out for a month. It really screwed me up. Bilateral pneumonia, and put me in the hospital for 6 days. So when I was out, my team jumped in and they had an awesome month. It was one of our best months. I think it was one of our top 10 best months ever while I was out, and I was completely off the grid. I wasn't involved in anything. So big difference, right? I literally took the time. So when I was out from the accident, I tried to push myself to get back in too quickly. And when I was out with COVID, I took the time to completely relax, completely heal, not get involved in stuff, call and check on my team, let them know I appreciate them, that I was still here, and that I'm going to force myself to heal. And don't want to say enjoyed it, but I took the time to enjoy the opportunity I'd had to not have to be involved in anything. Now I'd send videos out to my database, and it was amazing the support my team got. Huge support from people during that time frame. So I saw the ability to rally people together when you're in circumstances like that, and you got to have people. You've got to, there's a mentor of mine, if you will, or a peer / mentor / coach. His name's Larry Yatch, former leader of SEAL Team 3. And he says that the success comes through the ability to successfully coordinate action with others. And that's what we did. Coordinated action with others. We had some very successful months. I wasn't even involved. It was pretty awesome. So those are the things that I really learned, was the need of other people in both your personal life and your professional life, and that you need to see to their needs just as much as your own, if not more.
Yeah, that's super insightful. I mean, and you hear about things, and you mentioned, and the start of that is that sometimes be grateful for what's going on. Do you want to strive and still continue to push forward? We can do that for our lives. And I've always taken to heart some of your comments around, even the end of our lives, that you're going out top because you're going to push yourself and try to make the most impact for yourself, family, and others. But be grateful for the things that actually are here, even though they're not maybe even perfect in your world, but you want to continue to move it, but you still got to be grateful for it, because it's too easy to forget some of the wonderful things and just to, worry about all the negatives. It's certainly something I personally have struggled with, and sort of recognize, like, I have nothing to complain about. I have more to be thankful for than ever these days. And I'm trying to do something like this on this podcast to share like people like you and others, to help people recognize all the goodness that's going on in this world, but still be willing to push ourselves to kind of grow and become better along the way, and just be grateful for it. And certainly take some time off. I certainly appreciate that part of it too, because we all need to recharge, and it helps me push forward in the other areas of life when I get back to it. So it's really, really great stuff. Good reminder too. Um, Especially for a lot of people maybe listening to this who are maybe tied into their W-2 jobs. it's one of those grinds, right? We can get grinding 20, 30 years later. I just talked to a friend about it, Aaron, and he's just like, oh my God, the pandemic sort of helped me realize like I was just on that hamster wheel. And if that didn't happen, I would continue to be on it. But now my life has to have more meaning than that. And then, we need that time to reflect.
Yeah, every difficulty we run into does gives you the opportunity to reflect and make decisions. Now my decisions, I don't have to have the difficulties to make decisions, but all the time. But I do reflect on, okay, what, like you just said, I love to say when I go to the grave, I'm coming in hot. Well, doing what? Right? We can be busy doing nothing, right? It's like getting on an exercise bike and you're just pedaling like a madman and getting nowhere. It's very, very possible to wear ourselves out getting nothing done. And I feel that in ways I still do that. I mean, we're all guilty of it. A lot of
Mhm.
people think that they're all going, but am I doing enough of the right things? And that's where the difficulty lies, is knowing what is the right thing and being able to pivot off of it and knowing when to let something go that you were very passionate about, but you realize it's not doing what it should be doing. So now I need to be doing something else. And that is a question I think we'll continue to ask ourselves till death, whether or not we're doing the right thing. Now, it doesn't mean a person that's in a W-2 job, that's getting their wage is not doing what their ultimate best thing. That might be the only thing I want is a Saturday and a Sunday hanging out by my pool, drinking beers with the neighbors and grilling. That's it. And if that's what you want, awesome. Or if the 9 to 5 affords you the boat so you can go to the lake twice a month, then the other times you're relaxing by your pool and you can accomplish that and you run that every other weekend for the rest of your life. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just a matter of a person being 100% satisfied with what they're doing. And that's what it's all about. Too often we get too caught up looking at what somebody else's success is. We're so caught up in what the definition of success that we don't realize what success is for ourselves. I've got a very good friend of mine who owns a rather significant business, and he and his partner divested of some real estate, which was their plan. They buy it, build it up, sell it, right? And after many years, they sold. He got a significant amount of capital back out of it. That he had a check come in that he got deposited into his account that was so massive. And then he called me and another business partner. We have a partnership together. He says, "Hey guys," and he shared with us. I'm like, "Dude, that's so freaking awesome." And he thanked me. He goes like, "Dude, thank you for being the people I can talk this about, because I can't talk this about very many people. I can't share with this because they're going to be like, oh yeah, it must be nice." Instead of congratulating me for all the work that I went through, because it was hell making this happen. And then not only did he have that experience, but then he got to thinking, it's like, now I got to do the next thing. What's the next thing? And he's not satisfied. And when he was finally asked, what is the definition of success to him, he couldn't define it, because we finding it as achieving goals. Well, you achieve a goal and then what? You need to achieve another goal and then achieve another goal. And we never, ever, we're never successful. We're never happy. We constantly, you finish something. And that's why I don't hang up awards. I don't hang up any of this stuff, because the more I see them, the more I got to beat them. And I stopped hanging those up back in like 2002 or three. I was like, I'm not hanging these things up anymore. They were firewood to me. And I throw them off to the side. People are like, well, where's all your awards? Because I win tons of them. Right. And to me, it's useless, because it's yesterday. What does yesterday do for me? It does nothing for me. All it does is tell me I got to beat it tomorrow. And the more reminder I have that tomorrow has to beat yesterday, the more it becomes this enormous rat wheel. Like you said, a person in a W-2 job can find themselves in a rat wheel. A person who's an entrepreneur striving for their Everest can find themselves in a rat wheel of Everest and never, ever, ever be happy. So what is the definition of happiness? And I can honestly tell you, I really do not know right now. Yeah, what is that definition of success? I really do not know right now. The entire world might say, well, damn, he's successful. Look at his W-2, look at his bank accounts, look at his assets. Sure, in the top 1% of the world, but it doesn't mean anything. It's no different. If there's anybody on here, if you guys are listening, I don't know if you ever gotten a 6-figure paycheck, but you want what it feels like to get a 6-figure paycheck? It feels like Tuesday. You get it, and you're like, awesome. And then you're like, okay, now what? Well, crap, yeah, this is only going to last so long, so I got to get another one and another one. And it doesn't matter if you're making a $5,000 paycheck, a $2,000 paycheck, a $200,000 paycheck, $1,000,000 paycheck. It doesn't matter. It's the same thing.
It's incredible. And to that point where, back in before I even got into my own practice, my push to build wealth and grow it, because I watched my parents like just basically burn every dollar they made in their lives. It was just the worst thing ever. I said that would not happen to me. But when I finally got some wealth, I'm like, this doesn't feel any different, right? It didn't change my life. So you kind of, to your point, trying to figure out, well, what's the meaning of it? Like, what am I striving for? What gives me some life that allows me to, like you suggest, like continue to forge forward and fight the good fight, face another obstacle. I could just sit by the beach and just hang out. That this is not enough. And so yet we do have to find that out for ourselves. Like, how do we
You got
how
to,
do we continue to contribute in our own unique way?
that's the thing, until I've heard the saying, if you don't ask questions, you can't hear the answer. So first we got to ask the question, right? What is it? What's going to be the thing that creates ultimate happiness for us? And then we got to figure, okay, how do you achieve that? And you got to go start chasing that down. And it's not, and sometimes you do, let's just be blunt. I mean, you need the capital to be able to do this stuff. You can't just go vagabond. I mean, maybe you could, maybe there's some people that could walk off in their moccasins in the middle of the forest and live forever. And it could be the thing, right? That's not what I want to do. I love the mountains. I mean, that's my solace. Going to Alaska and spending 10 days hunting, absolute greatest thing. But there comes a point I want to come home, right? And there's only so much Alaska I can take in one shot because when I go, it's straight up wilderness, gone out away from everything type of deal. So finding the sustainable that I guess is defined by Larry is the optimized daily experience is sustainable over time. So what is the optimized daily experience? That's what we're seeking. Seek the optimized daily experience is something that you can do all day, every day. So for me, I guess the thing that gets me charged and really makes me happy is when I have that phone call with that client that's like, it's just all the light bulbs came on and they just are ecstatic about the conversation and they feel more empowered to move forward. Because that's what we're trying to do is create confident people. What you're doing with your business, creating confidence in people that they can move forward with investments, build their future because they built this awesome base. The infinite banking strategy, in my opinion, is the holy grail of creating wealth, at least the foundation for wealth. It gives you options. And then all the other options, my job is to ensure that they understand the option of investing in real estate from the single families, duplex, triplex, and fourplex, and getting the long-term leverage through me, the loan, the 30-year fixed loan, and understanding why that's the most important thing, the 30-year fixed loan in the deal. There's nothing else more important in that deal than getting the financing for 30 years. That's it. And I have the ability to explain that to people in a way that they get it. And man, the light bulb goes off. They have more confidence. They can move forward.
And I love where you brought it back to that, because you're probably meeting a lot of people who are striving to obviously build more wealth, but for the type of people who are interested in getting into rent real estate, which, you ask an average person, they're going to say, oh, that's just way too risky, right? There's too much risk to that. I can't do that. And I said, well, this is how a lot of wealth has been built over this country over many centuries, right? So what is it about the real estate investor that sort of connects with you?
It's understanding the real, I guess what connects would be one is the person have this more of an analytical conversation. Because when I first started, I was working with anybody, right? People do refis on their houses was the main thing in 1997 and 1998 and on forward, right? Getting cash out and getting a lower interest rate. Because we finally broken below like 7% on the average rate for people buying houses to live in. This was not investor loans, right? So when it got below 7%, people wanted to refinance. That's where it all started. And then, I started working with realtors, the people were buying houses, doing the first time home buyer thing. And I realized I hated it. I hated working with that type of loan because the conversation was really very emotional and I didn't want to take an emotional approach. I discovered the real estate investor in 2003. And it was a conversation that was very, very more analytical. It was based upon the numbers. Numbers make sense to me. And as I continued to work with them, the big thing there was looking for was cash on cash return, right? You put X amount of cash in, you get so much cash out every month. That all collectively at the end of the year equals how much cash, divide that into your initial investment. That's your cash on cash return. Well, as long as the cash on cash return was great, people were buying. But I started realizing it can't always be great, right? The cash on cash return is determined by several things: the price of the home, the interest rates, how much money you invested in it. Is a lot of money, is a little bit of money. right? Person says, well, I don't want to deal with the loan. I'm just going to put 100% down on this thing. Well, buy it straight out, not 100% down, just buy the thing 100%. Well, your cash on cash return kind of sucks at that point, right? If you put $100,000 into a house, right? You got $1,000 a month income, but you got to pay your taxes and your insurance on it. So you're maybe $750 a month. Well, $750 a month, I got to do the math here. I should have my calculator up for this, but when you're at 750 times 12, then you divide that into your 100, you're getting a cash on cash return of 9%, right? Still pretty good. Not a bad deal. But if you can only put 25% down, right? And you're getting $250 a month, I'm just kidding, you're putting $25,000 invested into it, getting $250, that's a 10% cash on cash. That's very interesting. But as the interest rates go up on a loan, all of a sudden your cash on cash might drop a little bit. But what I start showing to people is like, if you take that same amount of capital, same 100,000, you split it into 4 properties instead of just one, now you see that full 100,000 can develop to you, but that, let's just say it's even lower, an 8% cash on cash return. But then when you start to raise rents, you're raising rents on 4 properties, not just one. So if you raise the rents on, say, that $1,000 a month property, just the one that you paid cash for, you raised it just 3%. That's $30. Well, that $30 translated to your 750 now turning into, was that 780, right? Well, $30, when you divide that into the $750, you start to see that you've got basically a 4% increase in your cash flow. It's all right. But if you took that same $30, and if you divide it into, let's say you're only getting $200 a month cash flow on 4 properties, that's now 15% growth in your cash flow. Now you got that 15% growth on 4 properties. That's 15% growth on the entire 100,000 that you invested, right? Now you start to see how that compound is huge, very, very quickly, comparatively speaking to just one. The other thing that I really liked about talking about the real estate investors to understand where the real value of real estate comes, right? And the real value of real estate, we're going to do a little bit more math together here, Tom. So you're going to get your calculator out. If you take let's say what we're just talking about, $100,000 property, and you put 20% down, and you've got a 30-year fixed loan, and you're making $200 a month cash flow, like we were just talking about, and you're renting it for $1,000 a month, and you did your job as the CEO of your real estate investment business, which is to find the right people to work with, to find you the property, manage the property, rehab the property basically, or build it, and then the right lender to work with who's going to make sure that this all happens, and everything works like clockwork, and you keep it reasonably rented for the entire time you own it, and you can continue to raise rents on it. Who pays off the loan?
Well, in my mind, 2 things. It's a tenant who's occupying your house, who's paying for it. And partially, I think the government helps me pay for it because I get tax benefits.
We're not getting there yet. I'm going to pause at the tenant for right now. First, the tenant really, if you did your job and keep it reasonably rented, the tenant pays off that loan, period. They're giving you the money to pay it off. So this is where we're going to do the math. If they're paying that off over 30 years for you, you got a $100,000 loan, right? Actually, it's a $100,000 purchase price with 20% down. How much is your loan with 20% down on 100,000?
80,000.
80,000. That means you invested 20,000. So take that 80,000, divide it by 30, because that's how many years it's going to take the tenant to pay it off for you. And what number do you get? 80,000 divided by 30. Everybody who's listening, you guys can do the math as well to make sure Tom's right.
2,667.
So $2,666.67 to be more precise. Now hit your divide button and divide that into, let's say, 25,000, because you put 20% down plus 5,000 in cost. So divide that and hit 20, divide it into 25,000. What do you get?
10.7%, 66%.
So you're getting a 10.66% gain on your money every single year. Every single year that you have somebody in there paying that off for you, your initial 25,000 investment is growing by 10.66% of the original 25,000, right? Where else are you getting that?
Good.
Yeah, it's pretty damn slick, right? And it's not a compound growth, unfortunately, but it's still a growth, right? They're eliminating that debt for you. You're literally growing your 25,000 to 100,000, and then whatever that might be with appreciation. We're not even getting to appreciation. So that's your baseline. You're making 10.66% on your money every year of the original dollar amount. And that's, so shelf that. We know if you did your job right as the CEO of your real estate investment business, you're making that, right? We just talked about the ability to raise rents. How much is rents going up by in the US right now, year over year?
It's got to be pretty high right now. Probably, I would say high single digits.
We've seen it as high as 12% average, because you got places like Miami that has reached, achieved as high as, I think, 32%, Austin in the high 20s, Arizona in the mid 20s. And there's places that is actually the other direction, right? You go to Minneapolis, Minnesota, and it's negative 17%. Last I saw, it could be changed by now. Why would Minneapolis have such a decline in rents?
Maybe people are moving away from it.
Why would they be moving away from a place like Minneapolis, Minnesota?
For me, it's because I'm too damn cold.
For you, it's because, how thick your skin is. Other people, it's what happens when you burn down police stations. People want out. People that pay their bills don't hang out in places where people are burning down police stations and looting like crazy, right? So that whole incident has created that environment. It's happening in more places than just that. People exiting places that have that type of political philosophy, if you will. So be aware of what's going on in those markets. You may be able to get a cheap house, but you got to understand what's going on in rents too. So know that you got to keep it reasonably rented. You got to be able to raise rents. So because of that, my exercise we just went through with that 3% is very, very plausible. 3% is a very easily achieved thing. If you've got tenants right now, they're used to seeing $200 a year increases, which is, it's happening in many places. They're not going to bitch about your $30, right? You don't get excited about $30. They don't get excited about $30. So just know that right there. If you're making that kind of return on 3%, can you imagine what would be at 5, 6, and 10? So I encourage everybody. I don't care what the first year's so-called cash on cash return looks like. Look at year 2 and year 3 and year 4 and year 5 with this compound cash flow growth. But here's the other thing that people fail to realize is what happens. What's inflation doing to the dollar? You just brought this up.
It's bringing down the value of each dollar we owned.
It is. It's bringing it down ridiculously. So what is inflation today?
Last pulse year over year was like over 9%, 9.1.
9.1%. But the reality of inflation, in fact, I'm going to share something here with you. The reality of inflation is a lot higher than that. In fact, I just got to jump ahead into a couple things here. Here we go. So this is one of my favorite sites here, Shadow Stats. We start looking at inflation, you'll see the CPI, the Consumer Price Index, is what's being evidenced here with this red line. Because back in the 80s, they were just looking at all things that we were spending money on to figure out what inflation was doing. But then they adjusted it and decided, well, maybe we don't want to work on, maybe we want to look at things that we can manipulate with monetary policy, because the more inflation goes up, the more we got to pay people on their retirement and their Social Security and that kind of stuff. So they start playing with it. They have this target rate of 2% inflation. I mean, they got to just focus on the things that they can manipulate with monetary policy to keep this as low as 2%. Now you see they've achieved that for quite a long time. There's very, very low inflation, while all our real cost of living kept going up. But here we are, 9.1% inflation. We'll look at the real rate of inflation is probably 18. We start looking at what's really happening in the market with inflation. So why is this an important thing to understand? Well, the reason we need to understand this is because the dollar is being devalued with that inflation, right? And I like to use just 8%, because if you look back on that chart, all the way back to 2000, it was 2012, actually all the way back to like 1990s. We were approaching 8% quite often in the real rate of inflation, not just the BS rate of inflation that our federal government likes to give us. So what we're going to do is we're going to run some numbers here real quick. I'm going to share with you something. We're going to do another screen share. So this is a tool that I had built for me by the professor of accounting at Kennesaw State University. He contacted me to have me come in and spend time with the students, speaking to the students. And then we went ahead and worked this over to where we were able to figure out how inflation does impact a person's payment. So we've got in this scenario, $100,000 purchase price, $80,000 loan. It's a 30-year loan. I'll put in, today's date. So maybe working with today's numbers. And I'm going to put in 7% because 7% is, we're about there for this investors. We're not there yet, but we're about there. So let's just say that's where we're at. So you're going to pay a $532 payment, so $532.24 for 30 years. Every year, month, you're paying $532.24. Collectively, that equal $191,607.12. Right there, $191,607.12. That means you paid off principal of $80,000 plus interest of $111,607. This is where people freak out, saying, man, I'm paying more interest than I'm paying principal, and they start to freak. But what they don't realize is that every time you make a payment on the loan, the dollar is worth 0.666% less. Don't mark to the B stuff right there, right? But at 8%, it's worth that much less next month. And then worth 0.666 less the next month after that, and the next month after that. And when you recalculate every dollar over the next 30 years as it leaves your hands to pay back the $80,000 you borrowed, compare it to the day you borrowed it and pay it back over 30 years, you're only paying $72,535.80. That's important to understand. You're paying way less than what you borrowed. So a lot of people are asking me at this point, why is it that the lenders are willing to give us money for 30 years if it's going to be worth way less than what we borrowed, right? And let me hit something else before we even get there. I want to talk about inflation as itself. So this is what the interest rate, we're at this extreme inflation right now, right? Where they say our inflation is higher than it was in the 80s, right? We're highest inflation over 40 years. Well, we're actually higher when you look at the real rate of inflation. We're exceeding that. Well, take a look here. This is the 30-year fixed mortgage, 30 in the 15. They didn't start the 15 till in the early 90s. 30-year fixed rate mortgage. You go back 30 years ago when inflation was at its highest, look at what the mortgage was. The mortgages were 18%. And right now we're still in the 5s and 6s. 5s for voter occupied, 6s for investors, or high 6s basically. And they're freaking. They're like, why is rates so damn high? Look at our inflation. We should be here. So start understanding it's a gift right now of where we're at. Now let's take a look here. The federal fund rate, as of right now, is 1.75%. We're going to probably get 100 basis point raise in the next little bit when they go meet again. So it'll be 2.75%, but that's the baseline rate, the overnight rate. Well, what was it back when inflation was at its highest before? Look at this. Paul Volcker had this thing back again, 18, 19%. That's where the federal fund rate is. So I keep telling people, you got to understand where we should be versus where we aren't. Quit bitching about what we don't have. And so there's a lot of folks out there saying, well, maybe I should get an ARM because I can get better cash flow. And then when the rates come down, I can refund. What makes you think the rate's going down? The only thing that brought the rates down had to do with the Fed injecting so much money in since 2009. They injected $1.25 billion from January 2009 to March of 2010. At 15 months. Then they continued to play with this, start tapering off in 2018, and then COVID hits in 2020. What happened in 2020, right? You got March 20th of 2020, they injected $1 billion between March 20th and March 30th in 10 days. And they kept dumping it in there. Trillions, actually, not 1 billion, $1 trillion in 10 days. They continue to keep putting in billions of dollars to keep the rates artificially low. They're not doing that anymore. Rates are not going to go down. So who benefits from you thinking rates are where it needs to be? Who's the benefactor? It's the bank. So let's take a look at an amortization schedule. So when you say I'm going to refinance later, or you caught up in refinancing, you're saying, why would a bank want to lend me money for 30 years? Because they have a plan. Have you ever noticed how often people refinance their house?
Well,
Every 4 to 5 years. 4 or 5 years, right? Some people say even less than that, 2 to 3. I'm going to say 4 to 5. So let's say right here, we have a $120,000 loan here where a guy had, right? Started the $120,000 loan. He started paying on it for 4 years. He paid 48, for 48 months, he was paying $719.46 a month at that point. So his initial balance, $120,000, he paid, when you add all this up for 48 months, $34,524 in total payments for 48 months. his principal though. So you add all these, 719.46 times 48, you're getting at 34,524. But his balance, he knocked it down from 120,000, knocked it down to 113,000. That's only $6,462 that he paid it down. There's so much interest going out. 34,000 paid out, only 6,400 went towards his principal. So these are the numbers. So you can see that, understand where those come from. Here's the actual, then I'll give you the math that we did, 719.46 times 48, you get that. 120,000 minus the 113,000 and change, you get this. So it's, I'm adding the numbers right. So, but then he refinanced it. So he had that $114,000 loan, right? He added here the prepaid items plus the closing costs. When you added those into the loan, he's back to $119,833.
All right.
That's only $167 below where he was when he started 4 years later. So the banking industry realizes that 30 years they lose. I just proved that to you in numbers. They're not getting back what you borrowed. But if they can convince you to refinance every 4 to 5 years, look what they have. They put you right back where they started, and they get to keep all that interest. And then they get charged to charge you money to do it again and again and again. In 20 years, where do you think this guy is at? In 20 years, if he kept doing this every 4 to 5 years, he would be 20 years down the road, back at that 119,000 within $1,000 of where he started, where the guy down the street who started paying on his house and kept that same higher interest rate and just kept paying on it 20 years down the road, where's he at? He has 1/3 of the balance left. That's why they're willing to give you a 30-year fixed loan, because they don't expect you to continue to pay it the way they should. They're going to do everything they can to push on you to insist that you don't stick with it the way that you should. So the numbers and the things that we talked about here, I want people to be aware of where we are, where we're at, where we may be going. I'm not certain. So let's look at the average interest rates over the last 30 years. Actually, over the last, since 1971, it's more than 30 years. So what I've got here is I pulled in the rate since 1971. I'm not going to show you the full thing. That's 2,677 months is what we're showing here. And this is the owner occupied rate. This is not for investors. The average rate from 1971 to 2009, all the time before the Fed started manipulating it, injecting capital into mortgage-backed securities, was 9.1%. So since 2009, quantitative easing started. We just started January 1st, 2009 till now, the average rate was 4.02. If you want to get the average rate since the pandemic started and they started adjusting for the March 20th and started injecting capital, the average rate's been 3.33. If we go all the way from 1971 to 2022, the average rate's 7.76. So taking out manipulation by the Fed, the average rate is 9.1%. We are well below that. And that's for people that are living in the houses, living in. So it's not renters. Yeah, buying a rental, and we're still nearly 3% below that, or 2.5% on a rental. We look at the average rates, it's been a gift. So people need to understand that they should not be freaking out about what is going on out there. They should be taking advantage of it. And what I think that, I need everybody right now, get your camera out on your phone. Launch the camera if you're watching. I pause for a second, launch the camera, and here's why. We went over this calculator on how to calculate inflation. I'm going to get you the calculator in an app. I had an app created off that tool. So go ahead and get this, pause it if you have to, get this calculator. Now it's going to make you fill out some stuff. Put your full name in there. Don't jerk me off and give me a BS name. Put a real name, real email address, and real phone number, because I'm going to hot rod this app out at some point, and I want to be able to give you the information. So here's what it does for you when you get it. You're going to pull in what's called the QJO investment tool, which means to quit jerking off investment. That's what I tell people. If you're wasting time chasing rates, it's all you're doing is jerking off for this. Done. Now, you're going to get to this calculator. You're going to click on the mortgage amortization schedule right here. You're going to fill this out, 20% down, whatever the purchase price you're working on. I'd put in 7% interest rate because that's where we're going. Additional payment is there. We can put an extra $50 a month, $100 a month, see how it affects the loan and see how it's affected by inflation. You're going to find you pay more. The more you pay monthly, the more you actually pay in dollars, because you're giving them more money while it's worth more. Pay them only what you need to. So then you're going to hit the calculator, and it's going to give you, of course, the date you started, the principal, the interest, the total payment. You're going to scroll down. You're going to see the inflation adjusted payment, which is not much different. The total payments to date, which is the first payment, and the current balance. You're going to go up here to this calculator, to this calendar icon. You're going to click on that. You'll be able to scroll to your right every year for 30 years. So you can pick a different year and see how it affects it. I'm going to go all the way to 30 years, 2052. We're going to select and close. Now look where you're at. Total payments of $259,005.83. Inflation adjusted payments of $98,050. You paid less than what you borrowed, right? And I've got this other thing here, inflation adjusted payment, meaning $719.46, 30 years in the future will buy the same as $65.79 today. That's the value of the dollar that much in the future. So I wanted you to be aware of that. So in case you didn't get it, he's like, crap, now that I see this, I should have got the darn QR code. I should have done it because you said, I don't need a QR code, another app. Here's the app again. Now you have the ability to do that. Now it does more than just that. You can calculate your reserves for the house that you're going to buy, the reserves for any properties you already have. So you know how much you need to have in your bank account to purchase another investment property. You can also calculate your Schedule E. Your Schedule E shows you how much income you're declaring to the federal government and getting taxed on, but you can also go too far to go negative and put yourself in a negative income position for lenders. It's possible to be in a negative taxable position on your income with that, but also be in a positive income position with your lender because we get to add back things like depreciation and things to that effect. So be conscious of that when you get your taxes from your CPA, that you are able to take a look at the draft, use that calculator, plug in the numbers as it says, so it tells you what line to look at on your Schedule E per property, and see if you're showing a positive cash flow position or a negative cash flow position on the app. If it's positive on the app, then you're in good shape. If it's negative on the app, you need to go back and look and see what they're adding in there. Sometimes you're throwing way too much stuff in there in write-offs. You're still going to be in a negative taxable position. Don't put yourself in a position where you're in a negative income position for qualifying and put yourself out in the ability to continue to expand your real estate holdings.
It's amazing stuff, Aaron. I feel like listeners just got a inside scoop to like a economic seminar and use of how inflation, interest rates, all this plays into it, and thinking long term, like you're showing. You can get so enamored with like today's rate, like you were sort of saying, people get used to the low interest rates and they're complaining, I want, where is the lower interest rate? I can't. Thinking long term, we are in still a very advantageous position for interest rates, especially where inflation rates are and likely will be going. So
Exactly. And take advantage of it. There's an advantage in the sense that the average person out there wanting to buy houses will walk away from great deals. They don't have this data. They're too busy looking at cash on cash return and interest rate. Oh, the interest rates are up. It's not going to make any money. They don't realize where the real money is made. When you start seeing that, and the fact that you're getting the 11 to 10.6% on the front end, right? You're getting to raise rents. You're getting the depreciation piece of it. You're paying back less than what you borrowed. It's hundreds of percent return. Now, that's why I call it the quit jerking off investment tool. Let the other people waste their time walking away from great deals when you understand what a great deal is. You have better confidence, better understanding. You will have a better portfolio while they're still just running around looking for that awesome deal when they don't even know what successful deals are. They haven't been able to define success. So like I did when I was walking the parking lot looking for pennies, just so I can at least exist, but then later had the opportunity to have somebody introduce me to dollars and huge opportunity. Don't be wandering around looking for pennies, right? Get what pennies you need to so you can be successful in the bigger ventures, and have your eyes open to the people that are going to bring you there. That's me. I'm the guy walking into the grocery store. I want to take you to a greater opportunity. It's not going to be easy. Believe me, the 25 years I invested into this has not been easy. It's been hell, and it's going to continue to be hell. But I at least had the opportunity. We're trying to open opportunity for you. Quit looking down, quit looking at the pennies, and walking away from great opportunities.
And to add, and you mentioned earlier in the conversation, all the goodness that you just shared and the realities and the facts, right? It's just like you like why you like the rental real estate world is you go by facts and numbers and not speculation here. And the other angle that you alluded to was to even fund the down payments of these properties. Like if you actually had your own sort of financing arm, you could actually use your infinite banking policy to actually fund down payments on top of it. So
They actually do that. Just let me just describe how that's done, if that's okay.
yeah,
So the initially, I was introduced to this by a client of mine, the whole infinite banking strategy. And at first it seemed stupid because life insurance is freaking stupid. I had already bought multiple policies and got screwed by these guys. And I'm like, there's no way in hell I'm doing another one. Then I was shown the infinite banking strategy and how within the first 30 days or 45 days, I could tap into the capital I put in there. At $90,000, I was going to use to buy a couple of them, 3 investment properties. And that $90,000 was saved by putting aside 10+% of my income over a period of time. And then I was like, well, I'm going to invest into real estate and compound that 90 grand. Well, then I learned about this. Well, I took the 90,000, I bought a life insurance policy on me. Within a short window of time, able to borrow just a little over 80,000 out and buy those 3 investment properties. I took the cash flows from those 3 investment properties, is 600 and some odd dollars, almost 700, plus the 10% of my income that I was already saving, started paying back the note, the loan against the policies. It created this engine. As I knocked it down over about 15 months or so, I was able to get another 20 some odd thousand, almost 30,000, and buy another one. Now it's going a little bit faster. My income's going up. I'm paying it down faster. And then another one and another one. That was 2016. I started with 90 grand. I have over 700,000 available to me in multiple different policies because I keep building on them. And I have over $1.1 million on deploy right now because of those policies, because I was able to pay stuff back and pay stuff back, keep things going. Now, what I did is I looked at it's over 1.1 billion that I've actually got tied up in investments because of being able to create the engine with the policy. That's only been since 2016, guys. It's not hard when you actually have a system and a process to follow. You just got to start. And this, in my opinion, is the holy grail. You get started. I will guide you through it. I'd be more than happy to talk to you. We can get me, you, and Tom on a Zoom call, talk about this whole thing. I actually get my children involved. They have to, I have policy on each of them. They have to get policies on them and their spouse when they get married for 2 reasons. One, they need to understand what I'm doing and start saving at least 10% of the income. The policy's got to be built in a way that they can put 10% of their income with their paid up additions into it to build up their life and their future. And if something happens to my daughter's spouse, she doesn't have to come back and live with me, right? They've got that too. But they come and they vote and they work with us on these investments that we're doing. We talk about the investments together. So if something does happen to me and they get that windfall of death benefit, they just don't go blow it all out into stupid crap. They continue the process of building up the value of our family portfolio.
no, it's really powerful. And I know we won't have time to get into it, which again, before we got on the line here on this podcast, I knew you were going to be a pretty good guest because you have so much knowledge to share, like talking about legacy and sort of family planning, all that stuff. We won't get into it now, but it definitely provides a tremendous sort of backdrop and protection against that and control of wealth and money, right? That you can control, right? You don't have to ask, you don't have to submit applications. You can access your money whenever you want through your entire life, which is a huge advantage that,
100%.
right, is awesome. Aaron, this was absolutely amazing. I knew that you're going to really help my listeners kind of see a different approach to things and sort of see it for what it is, using facts and sort of unique insights. So I really appreciate all your time and effort with this. And I think that people are going to get massive value out of this. So you have to hear, you've got a lot of other things going on. Can you share a little bit, some highlights of that and how folks can sort of learn more about you and your business?
Well, the easiest way to find me right now is just aaronchapman.com. If that one doesn't work, Aaron B. Chapman, B as in Bravo, not the middle name though. And if you still can't find it, just type in Aaron Chapman. Look for the bearded redneck that's a lender, right? There's a few of us out there that've got things that got some books going. I have written 4, and I started off, I wrote over 370 pages, but nobody reads 370 pages. So I released 30 pages at a time with its own cover, as it's basically reaching a chapter at a time. I'm actually going to read those a little bit and have some things associated with those that keep people active and moving with the concepts. But I'm also working on a book right now, rather bigger book to accompany those. I've got 4 more to release. So it's really 5 more to release, the bigger one plus 4 more smaller ones. So there's a lot I got cooking on that. I've got I got another YouTube channel, 2 YouTube channels, one that you can find within the media section on my website, aaronchapman.com. Click on media, watch the videos. twice a week, I put videos out on what's going on in the market, how it affects you as a real estate investor, and what you should be looking for. Is it always accurate? No, because we're in a stupid freaking time. It makes no sense why we got some of the things happening in our world. Too much manipulation, too much emotion, right? But we're doing the best we can. I have another one. It's not as prevalent as it was at one point. We weren't, it was more or less, I was taking people like Tom's doing here, but we were taking them out to go do, rock crawling or hunting or something like that, and sitting around the campfire and get insights from them. And that's also out there. That's you got to go to youtube.com/quit jerking off. You can't search that in there. You got to type that in. youtube.com/quit jerking off. Because if you go search it, you're going to find everything else. So you want to be careful with that one. It's going to give you scientific reasons why you should or should not be doing that kind of thing. But that media, we've evolved that media company. Now we're getting involved in series and movies and that kind of stuff. So that's where that company is heading off to. So those are the things I've got cooking. There's a lot of other things that just life in general, trying to get out and hunt as much as I can, spend time with the family. And I got a grandkid coming in, my first one in about 3 weeks. So there's that too.
That's awesome. Well, listen, I just, as I suspected, massive value, and you got 1,000 things going on, and I'll put certainly links to everything in the show notes so people can access all your tremendous information and media out there. So appreciate it. So Aaron, I thank you so much for joining me today. I'm look forward to continued conversation and mentorship. Just a wonderful asset to me personally, and certainly for my listeners out there. I know they've got massive value out of this. So thanks a lot.
Well, brother, it's good to see you, buddy.
All right, man. Take care. Thank you for being with us here today on the Perennial Pride podcast. It's an honor to be a small part of your journey to financial freedom. If you gained new insight on today's episode, please follow us on your favorite podcast app, such as Apple or Spotify, and follow us on our YouTube and Facebook pages. Also, we always love feedback on helping to improve what we're doing here. So please provide in comments and questions so we can make this podcast even more helpful for you.